I guess it's a sign of the times. We got the Quest diagnostic medical, I guess there's probably coronavirus tests in there. Back again, walking the streets of New York. Just was listening to a press conference with Governor Andrew Cuomo. He's pretty adamant that he's not going to implement a citywide lockdown. There's a lot of contradictory information coming at people. You know, they tell you that they don't want you gathering in places with lots of people. Governor Cuomo also announced that he's reduced the occupancy restrictions for things they had previously cut. I guess office and staff occupancy of general businesses to 50% of normal, and as of today, they've cut it down to 25%. So, I don't know. They don't seem to be doing anything to restrict who's entering the subway or anything like that. They are calling for, well, that just disappeared, but they're calling for recently retired health professionals. I mean, they're ramping up, right? What we've seen so far at hospitals and the interview that played earlier today with an ICU nurse, it doesn't initially seem to reflect the reaction, the response of shutting down the city, shutting down the country, rejiggering the whole government and the whole economy to convert the United States into a socialist country. They're talking about the government nationalizing key industries. I mean, if they're going to bail out the airlines, the hospitality industry, I mean, where does that end? We've spoken a lot about, you know, why do those industries, why do the banking industry, why do these guys get bailouts? And so to, I guess, appease the masses, they're talking about $1,000. Now they're putting restrictions on, you know, what your income is and whether or not you get it. But what if your income up until last week was above the threshold and then now it isn't? Do people see that van there? That's Department of Veterans Affairs with a satellite on it. I've never seen a van like that before. It's got some symbols and logos on it. Maybe some people recognize. You see that? I don't know. Now, normally there's a whole lot of homeless people hanging out here at Penn Station. We're not really seeing that today. Why don't we go down in there again and we'll get an idea for how it's going inside there. We can kind of, I mean, at this point, it's not so much about commentary, it's more a historical record of all this stuff as it's happening to us in real time. A lot of people have been saying a lot of different things. I want to clarify, I don't think this is fake. I'm not saying that there is no virus. I think that there's something else going on. And I think that because when people behave in ways that are contrary to logic, it means they're either illogical or the logic you're comparing their actions to is flawed. So when one person acts illogically, it's probably likely you've got an illogical person. But when an entire country acts illogically, seems like something else might be happening. So I wonder, is there a naturally occurring deadly virus spreading through the world at an alarming rate? Why didn't they make it mandatory for all but essential people to be out? Here's, you know, this is a fraction of the normal density of what we would see here in Penn Station. But there's a lot of people. If this is this insanely virulent, deadly virus, why would they have these people going? How you doing? You fearful of coronavirus?
Huh?
Are you fearful of coronavirus?
Am I fearful? Well, I mean, I'm not afraid.
You're looking for it?
No, I'm not looking for it either. But there's nothing we can do. So what all we can do now is go to God. Yeah, when the God can, step in, take control of everything. Now, I think it's about time now that we come back to God. We don't know what it is.
God will take care of it.
Us that if we come back to Him, we have been neglecting Him. We have turned our back on Him. It's about time now that we know who created us. And this is a creation, the universe.
Are you from Haiti?
No, I'm from Africa, Nigeria.
I thought your accent was from Haiti. I was going to ask you about the Clintons. How come there's so few cases in Africa? Some people have told me they think that black people aren't susceptible to coronavirus. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't, even if somebody was just talking to me and they say, well, they say only white are dying from the coronavirus. I say, no, that's not true.
I think it's mostly Chinese people.
No, that's not true. Because this is something that doesn't discriminate. They say, well, you're black, you're white. Anybody can be affected by it.
Yeah, that's true.
Anybody.
So was your job affected? Did you lose your job as a result of this?
Oh, right now, I've been out of job. I don't know when I'm going to go back to work. I work in one of the bigger convention centers and everything is shut down.
There's no work.
A Jarvis Convention Center.
Oh, yeah.
And it's shut down by the government.
So people aren't coming back there for a while.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. But we continue to pray and ask God to step in, and take control of everything so we can have peace on life. So
that's all everybody wants, right?
Panic, there's no need to panic.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Good luck to you. I hope everything improves. Thanks. Well, there's some insight from that guy. So he works at the Javits Center. That's interesting. I mean, I'm not sure what that guy does at the Javits Center, but anybody who works there, the Javits Center is a big convention center here in New York, and certainly anybody who works there, if there's no convention, they're not going to have too much to do. So these guys are still baking bread. People still buying bread. They're selling books.
Track 14 East.
Now, I guess this was a corporate decision. This was open the other day. Tim Hortons and Pizza Hut and Nathan's now closed. Let's see how a day or two has affected Amtrak travel and New Jersey Transit travel. I'd say there's definitely less people here than there were the other day, and it's dramatically less people than we would expect normally. I see train times on the schedule, so the trains are still running. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't understand why they're sort of tickling the panic button. I'm not in favor of panic, but they've closed all the restaurants. They've told everybody not to go to work, but trains are running. The train station is open. We're hearing that they need more hospital staff, but we've seen hospital staff sitting there in ambulances. The hospital does not have any protocol. Like, why didn't they tell all those people at those hospitals, if any reporters or any citizens are interested in information, direct them to this website, give them this phone number to speak to a public information officer, do something. They didn't do any of that. So, I mean, how prepared are they? They're very interested in scrambling to purchase respirators and ventilators and test kits, but I don't know. Are these appropriate precautions? Now, some people are upset with me for walking around, but again, I mean, I'm not hanging out with any people who are in the risk category. And if they are in the risk category, I hope they're not going to be outside. Well, let's see. What are these guys doing? It looks like they're repairing a broken window here at Dwayne Reed. I wonder how that happened. Yeah, I mean, strong argument to be made for obviously trying to allay panic for as long as you can. We don't want people looting and stuff like that. I didn't see the direct announcement from Philadelphia police or some of these other police departments that people are saying have publicly announced that they're not going to arrest burglars and drug dealers and prostitutes. I can't imagine what the purpose would be in announcing that. It seems like an invitation to burglars and drug dealers and prostitutes to do what they're doing. Now here's an army guy on the street. It's become pretty common to see army guys inside the train station. Maybe this guy's picking up lunch. He certainly doesn't want to talk to me or have any authorization to say anything, but he's an army guy. Let's see if we can provoke some answers from him. It looks like he's wearing a bulletproof vest or something. Have they given you guys any special protocols for coronavirus?
No special protocols, sir.
No special protocols at all?
Sure. Are you recording this? Right, obviously you are.
Yeah.
Anything that you need to know about Joint Task Force? Joint Task Force isn't really covering anything with the coronavirus.
How come they don't have you wearing a mask? They don't have you wearing gloves?
We're not part of
You
the
just have
coronavirus
loads of
task force.
clips for guns in there and you're walking around getting ready to shoot somebody, it looks like. That's weird to me. Why isn't the army guy wearing a mask and rubber gloves? I saw he had another clip for the Glock shoved in his thing there. Maybe that's normal. I don't know. Am I recording? No, I just walk around with a camera on a stabilizer because it looks good. You know, I think everybody's under pressure. And if you're the governor, if you're the president, keeping everybody calm is a big part of this. But this whole notion that we're all stupid and need to be, you know, sheltered from facts and information, I don't agree with that. I think that the people that are running the government are just regular people. And I'm not necessarily convinced that they're any smarter than anybody. We got a little cluster of people I don't want to really interact with here. Now, something interesting for people to know is that there's a methadone clinic here. Right over there is 21st Century 3D's former office. And right around the corner from that, I don't know if it's still there, but there was a methadone clinic and there were frequently recovering drug addicts hanging out around there. So, let's see, McDonald's, lights are on, but no workers in there. It's totally closed. It does say takeout. Oh, no, there's somebody taking out McDonald's. So McDonald's is still open. Independently owned luggage and gift stores over here, still open.
Alright, so when you want to talk to me,
You know what I'm saying?
when you want to talk to me,
So there's some people out. Gonna take a little walk back through Times Square. Right now I'm heading up to St. Luke's Hospital on 59th Street. We've been so far to New York Presbyterian, which as I understand it is the largest hospital in New York City. I find it odd that they keep saying that New York is an epicenter for coronavirus. I guess maybe they mean Westchester and not New York City. But I mean, how do you have it not spreading from Westchester to New York City in the time that's already elapsed if it's gone from Wuhan, China to the United States? It seems to me there should be more signs at the hospitals. There's an ambulance. But, you know, having ambulances drive through this neighborhood is totally normal. You got 8 or 9 million people in this city, you fall and break your leg, you're gonna call an ambulance. So, a lot of people not seeming too bothered by this. Temporary closed here at Chef U. Temporary closure at Azuki. Roast Kitchen, temporary closure. Gregory's Coffee, looking very closed. Here's a food delivery guy wearing a mask. My apartment building has, oh, that guy's got a beer. Good for him. So these guys are open, still cooking food. My apartment building has now implemented some new rules. You're not allowed to have food delivered up to your apartment. You got to come down and get it. They've closed, various services of the building, only emergency stuff. They said if you're, doing construction. Now, a lot of people, how can I watch in back of me? I'm an asshole. So we do see a lot of Verizon trucks, and we see moods flaring. I mean, that guy is creeping up behind me and saying, watch in back of you. I'm curious how he expects me to do that. I do have a thing here that can see behind me, but I'm not looking at aggravated dopes like him. So many people getting aggravated by this. That's the other problem, is that there's a cumulative psychological effect happening now where people are in their homes concerned about their future, concerned about their health and their family, and that puts pressure on people and causes them, in that guy's case, to act like dicks. And a lot of people come online and put in messages that are reflective of that. Oh, I almost forgot to mention. So last night, we did a special episode with John Cullen, and John and I are frequently dealing with topics that are incendiary, let's say. They are prone to getting blocked and deleted from mainstream video platforms like YouTube. So a long time ago, we created this method where a variety of co-hosts who appear on Crowdsource the Truth, who share similarly controversial information, appear on sponsor-exclusive shows on Subscribestar and Patreon. And the reason we chose to do that is twofold. First of all, if we put out information, whether it's free or behind a paywall, but it gets blocked and deleted, that's useless. So, by putting it on Patreon and hosting it from an alternate video hosting service, Vimeo, we avoid that. Now the problem is, last night, after this John Cullen video, which was explosive, John was dealing with the statistics that the World Health Organization had been providing to all the medical professionals around the world and the politicians who are creating the protocols that we're all living by. And some people said that these numbers are inaccurate. I agree that that's a very likely possibility, but that wasn't the purpose of the exercise. The purpose of the exercise was to say, okay, here's the data that they're using, so let's evaluate their data. And if we don't even come to the same conclusions that they come to from their data, the question of the data being inaccurate is a secondary question. So we put this video out on Patreon and Subscribestar, and immediately after the live stream, Patreon locked down every single Crowdsource the Truth video anywhere on Patreon. So whether you're subscribed to Crowdsource the Truth on Patreon, or John Cullen, or Oleg Damagard, or True Pundit from Mike Moore, or Lee Stranahan, or Dr. Corsi, or Kevin Shipp, or the Moriartys, or David Hawkins, all of those videos are temporarily inaccessible. Now, I want people to understand, the videos haven't been deleted. Patreon has no access to the video library. That's a separate service provider, and I have multiple backups of every video that Crowdsource the Truth has ever made. But there's a temporary freeze on Patreon.
I'm gonna die from corona.
You're gonna die from corona, you say? I think that guy's more likely candidate to die from stupidity. But we'll see how he does. Here's another ad for Norwegian Cruise Lines. Yeah, so anyway, right now, if people join Patreon, they're not going to be able to view all the videos. There's only one test video that's viewable that I put up there for Patreon tech support to be able to troubleshoot the problem. I was in touch with them earlier this morning. Problem wasn't resolved when I left the apartment, and I, again, filled with cell phones right now, so I can't exactly check it. But if Patreon continues to not function, the immediate solution for people is to go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You can access all the videos there, new live streams, videos that have been accumulating in the library for months and years. So that's a short-term fix for everybody. We're going to get it solved on Patreon. It is strange that it's only affecting Crowdsource the Truth, and it's affecting videos hosted on YouTube and videos hosted on Vimeo, and it's not affecting Subscribestar. So it seems very much like a Patreon problem, and hopefully they can solve it. But obviously San Francisco, they're experiencing all the same sort of stuff that we are. Everybody's on lockdown. This is 42nd Street. I mean, look at that. Times Square. It'd be nice to compare this footage to, you know, New Year's Eve or Christmas time and just see throngs of people. So, yeah, this hospital is on 59th. Let's see if we can get Kevin Shipp involved in this conversation here. I think we can. Okay, let's see if we can get Kevin out of here.
Hey, Jason.
Hopefully, Kevin, you can see. Oh, it's going to be the street. Let me straighten Kevin out here. Can you see up 8th Avenue?
Your screen is still frozen.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still frozen.
Huh. All right. Well, people can see you, so that's what's important.
Okay.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
we will be able to get the screen back. Now, so Kevin, I've just been walking around New York, checking out what's going on. Governor Andrew Cuomo had a press conference earlier today, and he said that he is dedicated to not having the city get shut down. How are things there where you are? You're basically off grid.
Well, we're off grid. Yeah, we're on the off grid farm. We're down here just with peace, quiet, and tranquility. So everything's good. Deep in the woods here, and Atlanta sounds like it's pretty much like New York in terms of what's going on. But we're pretty much, of course, we're stuck way down in the woods, so we're kind of separated.
And who have you been speaking to? Have you heard any information from anybody that you think people would want to know about?
Well, I'm getting information from all over the place. Of course, I'm on the news 24/7. What's ironic is, to me, is some of President Trump's arch enemies are now coming out and complimenting the job he's doing after calling him a racist and him being the cause of this. All of a sudden, we're seeing this 180-degree turn. Ilhan Omar, the governor of New York, even some members of the mainstream press have come out supporting the president, and that just seems kind of strange to me.
I agree with you, Kevin. And you know, whenever I see Joe Scarborough and people along the lines of who you're describing praising the actions of President Trump, particularly when I dislike those actions, it makes me wonder what is going on.
Yeah, same here.
I wanted to ask you this. So a lot of people have been subscribing to the YouTube channel, Kevin, and you know, you and I have been doing some schedule changes with our sponsor exclusive show, The Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of people watching now, I think, who maybe haven't seen you before. You know, people who are very concerned about the virus, but perhaps haven't looked into some of the things that you and I talk about on the intelligence assessment. You, of course, are a recovering CIA officer, former member of the CIA who blew the whistle on their plans to use the state secrets, privilege to hide things that you were revealing that were really damaging to national security. So I wanted to ask you, Kevin, when you see something like this happening that doesn't seem to make sense, we've got the city closed down, people told to stay in their homes, but yet the subway remains open. I saw an army guy walking around with no face mask, no gloves, contradictions in terms of these Democrats who are suddenly praising Trump for basically manually shutting down the economy. What do you think is going on? Is this an organic viral pandemic, or is it something else?
Two things. One of the things that I have learned the hard way personally, seen personally, coming from the belly of the beast. Number one, never trust what your government is telling you. The nature of government is to hide things, not reveal them to the American people. First of all. Second of all, another thing I've learned, and this is where the we the people aspect is so important. I've learned to trust my gut. So if our gut is telling us something is weird, and I even did studies on this in some of my master's research, a good majority of the time your gut level instinct is correct. So we're seeing things that don't add up, and I think we need to pursue those and follow those up and look into those further.
Right. And one of the things that was brought to my attention, Kevin, I'm in a pretty unique position hosting Crowdsource the Truth, because various experts appear on the show week in and week out. And so I get exposed to all this knowledge and experience and research that so many other people are doing. I'm kind of like this hub. I can, sorry, hang on. We got some gravel trucks there. I don't know what they're doing yet, but they seem to be working together. So I get all the information coming into me, and I have an opportunity to evaluate it maybe that other people might not have. So something happened last week that I felt was quite significant, but it hasn't gotten nearly as much attention as the coronavirus. We saw Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, rebuff Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince wanted Putin to slow down oil production coming out of Russia, because Russia is producing oil at $30 per barrel, or at the time they were, and Saudi Arabia was up around $50 a barrel. So he essentially invited Putin into OPEC, which I'm not maligning the organization. It literally is an international price-fixing cabal that controls the price of oil. So they said to Putin, join our international price-fixing scheme, and he said no. And the price of oil tumbled. But it's not the price of oil that I'm thinking about. It's this petrodollar. And the aspect that I wanted to ask you about, Kevin, so if you're the CIA, let's say, and you know that the United States government is based, or I should say the United States economy, the value of the dollar, is based on, literally, a Ponzi scheme that is expected to eventually fail. Don't you develop a variety of contingency plans for how to handle a variety of different failures of the petrodollar? Was that ever discussed when you were at the CIA?
Well, that's the amazing irony, I guess, if you want to call it that, regarding the CIA, what it does, how it operates, in that it has its own definition of national security, and typically that's its own survival. But my experience being in the CIA and with the Department of State for a total of 20 years, and since I've come out, is the CIA has completely ignored the real national security, and that's the economy and the fragility of the economy, and the fact that with our national debt, and now we're in a serious situation here. The CIA largely, other than coup staging for oil, going into countries and to get the oil, the CIA largely has ignored. One of their abysmal failures is the prediction of coming economic crisis. They've made that mistake over and over and over, and I think the agency's been awfully quiet lately, but I wouldn't be surprised if they completely missed this.
Wow. Well, I mean, again, you're speculating now, drawing a hypothesis based on your extensive knowledge of the agency, but of course you have no direct knowledge of these things. Even if you were still in the CIA, it's entirely possible that elaborate plans could exist along these lines, but if you weren't involved in evaluating or creating them, you would never know, right?
Well, and we would hope so, because currently the the role of the CIA director is a cabinet level official. So Director Haspel's got to be right in there with the president in planning all these economic contingencies. So you would think, just based on that the CIA would be in part of this planning, although their role really is a collection of foreign intelligence, not setting economic policy, but it's a cabinet level position. And so you could just reach, I think, a pretty solid conclusion that the CIA is in, at least participating in part of this planning.
Right. A lot of people have questioned the appointment of Gina Haspel, first female CIA director. You and I, along with John Kiriakou and Bill Binney, did a roundtable during which John told us that Gina Haspel, prior to being director of the CIA, took special flights to Abu Ghraib to personally witness torture sessions. You remember that?
Yes, and her nickname, according to John, was Bloody Gina. She took such an interest in the torture, and of course it was Gina Haspel that was responsible for the destruction of those 10 torture tapes that Congress had demanded from the CIA.
Right. So we're dealing with somebody that's willing to do things that probably you and I and a lot of the people watching us right now are not exactly on board with. I guess what I'm getting at, Kevin, is,
agreed.
you know, if the president and the CIA and the Treasury Department, they all know that there are a number of factors that could disrupt this petrodollar system. And just to clarify for people, it's not that the value of the US dollar is based on the price of oil. It's based on this petrodollar system that forces everyone buying or selling oil to do those transactions in dollars. And Kevin, what I observe, this is purely my speculation based on what I'm observing, is that I believe when Vladimir Putin refused to join the price-fixing cabal, he was firmly stating that he's challenging the price-fixing cabal and popping a pin in the inflated balloon that is the Ponzi scheme of the petrodollar, and I believe he initiated the collapse of the US dollar.
Well, and he'd just be getting back at the U.S. attempting to collapse the Soviet currency way back when. But, you know, Putin's being smart. He's a nationalist. He's looking out for his own people and his own people's interest above everything else. And he's not going to accept this this honey-dripping invitation to join the oil cartel mafia. He's being smart. He's a brilliant, whatever you think of Vladimir Putin, he's a brilliant strategist, and he's a nationalist. He puts his people first.
Right. So, I mean, if you're in Russia, what Vladimir Putin is doing makes a lot of sense for Russia. You might not like it if you're the United States, but as you just described, he's thumbing his nose at the same cartel that destroyed his economy just 30 years ago. So why would he trust or help that group? So to rephrase my earlier question, let's say you're the president of the United States, this thing starts happening, and your initial response is, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. We've had Ebola, we've had H1N1, people will get sick, people will die, but it will eventually blow over. And everyone's saying, oh, no, you're minimizing it, whatever. Is there a time, Kevin, where the CIA takes the president, or someone takes the president and says, listen, Trump, here's what's going to happen. You're going out one way or another. We're either going to say that your coronavirus test is positive and spray you with coronavirus, or you're going to get on board. I mean, does that happen? Does that conversation happen?
Well, our volume is going in and out, but I think I still have you. Well, I have proven in many of my speeches that the shadow government, the CIA, manipulates the office of the president, Congress, and even the judiciary. In previous presidents, the CIA basically has had carte blanche to do what it wants to do, and basically the president, George W. Bush, being a painful example, just goes along with it and got us into the Iraq War, single biggest military mistake in U.S. history. So there's no question about the fact that the shadow government, the CIA, and the other deep state plants around Trump are trying to coerce him into doing their bidding, which is always the increase in power and always the increase of grabbing oil from another country. So that influence is there. I have to tell you, Jason, so far, and we'll see during this crisis, so far Donald Trump is the only president since JFK that has told the CIA no. Not only no, but HE double toothpicks no. And that's why we saw soft coup 1 and soft coup 2.0 with the Russia collusion and the impeachment hoaxes. So we'll see. There's a war, there's a battle in Washington between the shadow government, deep state, and the president right now. And I guess it depends on what his resolve is to make his own decision.
You know that I agree with you on those points, but my concern now becomes, you could be as dedicated as you want to winning a chess game, but when you find yourself in checkmate and you have absolutely no options, that becomes an interesting thing to contemplate. And I mean, obviously, there's no way for you to know. You're no longer in the CIA. You weren't involved in any hypothetical conversation that I might be speculating about, but I just wonder if they knew the economy was going to collapse to the extent that the dollar was going to have a dangerous reduction in value along the lines of what's happened in Venezuela, et cetera, where you go to the store and even though whether there is or isn't toilet paper or meat or milk or whatever, if a roll of toilet paper is $40 or $100, that has a significant impact on our lives, particularly if everybody's business is closed and nobody has any money. Were you surprised, Kevin, at how eager people were to collect their $1,000 government check and go stand in line like it's Kiev 1976, waiting for toilet paper and bread?
Well, first of all, Jason, they did know. The economic red flags have been out there for over 2 years regarding the state of the U.S. economy. We are heading for an economic crisis. Donald Trump has fended that off, but they all know. They know. I guarantee you, they know in the intelligence circles and the NSC and other places that we are facing an imminent economic crisis. They knew that before coronavirus. The Fed was pumping money before coronavirus, dropping interest rates before coronavirus. They knew that we were in economic trouble even before this virus hit. So yeah, they already knew it. Were they doing anything? Sadly, no. They were deferring to the Federal Reserve, which you and I both know is an unconstitutional organization made up of foreign banks. But they were deferring to the Federal Reserve to print more money and to lower interest rates. They're still doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's exactly how they intend to fix this. It just seems like that caused the problem, and that's going to cause the problem to get much worse. So what do you see happening in the near term? I know it's difficult to anticipate.
Well, we're going to see a further decline in the stock market, and it's gut-wrenching because a lot of people who had the thrift plans have lost a big chunk of their retirement. People are being laid off. People can't go to work. The economic implications, the virus itself is bad enough and dangerous enough, but what is most alarming are the financial impacts it's having on our economy, and those impacts are not going to go away soon. Those are going to last at least heavily into August, and it's probably going to take a few years to return to normalcy with the economy. This is a serious economic crisis aside from the virus itself.
Yeah, it's absolutely unprecedented, I would say. I apologize about the noise, Kevin. It's always a balance
no worries.
between...
Hey, that's New York, brother.
Exactly, trying to get out into the street and take the pulse of the city and having an environment that's conducive to production. I don't know why, maybe it's the temperature, but even though I have this phone plugged in, it just gave me a low battery warning. So I'm only a block away from the hospital. We're going to take a look. We see vendors here wearing the coronavirus masks. We've heard a lot about the private sector getting involved. They want respirators.
Yeah.
They want, manufacturing. Donald Trump has invoked this Korean War era Production Act. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, guess where surgical masks are made? China.
China? Right.
I think seriously, as well as most of our pharmaceuticals, how stupid can we be and still breathe to do that? So no, I think Donald Trump is right in doing that. Is we've got to start producing our own, and our industry has been known to pony up amazingly during crises like this. I think that's exactly the right thing to do, to bring the private sector in and start producing these things. Yeah.
So Kevin, I'm here in Columbus Circle. I don't know if the Skype camera has come back online for you. Can you see? We've got the Trump International Hotel right over there, but the area is totally empty. There's a lineup of taxis waiting for fares. Nobody getting in them. Normally there'd be a ton of activity over here. This is a giant shopping mall that appears to be closed. The shoe store is closed. There's two ladies cleaning in the bank, but there's not a lot of people around, Kevin.
Wow. Well, that's chilling. It really is. It's chilling.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, the Time Warner Center that I'm standing outside of right now was featured in the movie Cloverfield, where aliens came to Earth and there's all kinds of destruction, but that's what this event is reminiscent of, some sort of strange horror movie or science fiction movie where there's just, so few people on the streets.
Yeah.
We haven't We haven't heard anything from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. I'm sure you were following the story back in July. David Hawkins has spoken about this quite a bit, but there was a Chinese scientist arrested by the RCMP, escorted out of the level 4 biohazard lab there in Toronto, I believe. And this is a Chinese scientist who's traveled to Wuhan, who is handling coronavirus and other deadly infectious viruses. There was a follow-up article from the Canadian Broadcasting Company in October that reminded us that there was an ongoing investigation, but gave virtually no details. Why is President Trump and why are the U.S. authorities not looking into what, if any, role this Chinese scientist might have played in the planting of a potential biological weapon, a genetically engineered modified coronavirus? We've heard nothing about this.
Well, I guarantee you they're looking into that. I guarantee U.S. intelligence, as best they can in communist China, is looking into that possibility for sure. And it's worth remembering that the RCMP is essentially Canada's CIA. It is a very corrupt organization. It is joined with RCI at the hip, like brothers and sisters. It has been behind the downing, the cover-up of aircraft crashes, significant ones in Canada in the past. The RCMP is not an honest organization. It is an intelligence organization, and it works directly with our CIA.
And what differentiates the RCMP from CSIS, the Canadian Secret Intelligence
The
Organization?
RCMP is kind of like the FBI in terms of the intelligence roles that our FBI has. The RCMP has those also, and it's created a massive kind of its own secret organization in that regard, using its nationwide, Canada-wide law enforcement powers, blending into intelligence and intelligence investigation. So the RCMP, although it works with Canadian intelligence, it has become, in essence, an organization all its own. And frankly, and I know some people up there connected with the RCMP, the former RCMP officers, that it's rife with corruption.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds, as you said, very similar to our own FBI.
Yeah.
There is, in fact, some crossover in terms of the activities of the CIA. So I think I'm here at the rear of the hospital. I see a window there that says Mount Sinai Doctors. And I think the entrance to the hospital is on 59th. And I'm on 60th right here in Columbus Ave. Nobody really around, very few people, very few cars. Got a large church here. I don't know if people can see that. Nice stone carvings on the church. Just trying to find the entrance here to the hospital. You know, I don't know if you've been following all the videos, Kevin, but this will be the third hospital I'm visiting in New York City.
Right.
And while we're hearing the governor talking about how the hospitals are expected to be overwhelmed and they're sending a naval hospital ship to New York, I think today, maybe tomorrow, I'm not seeing that when I am on the ground. Now, obviously, I'm not being given access. I'm not even having any kind of official communications with the hospital. But don't you think a viral pandemic of sufficient urgency that we would shut down the entire city and the entire economy? Shouldn't there be more visual signs around indicating that that's happening?
Well, there should be, and in a way, perhaps it's kind of like a town is waiting for a tsunami to hit. It's coming, everything is quiet, everything is settled, and it's very possible they're just preparing for what they think is going to eventually hit. That's a possibility, and that's why you see all the ambulances sitting around just kind of waiting. Nothing, based on the videos I've seen that you've done so well, there's not a whole lot going on at these hospitals at all. So are they waiting for this tsunami to hit? Are they putting out disinformation in terms of the crisis itself? That's where investigative journalists like you and myself and others come in, is we have to find the truth, but you can be sure that we're not going to get the full truth from the government. That's not what the government does.
Right. And what do you think about all these predictions, how we're going to have this exponential explosion? I mean, you and I aren't doctors. It's difficult for us to know. But these doctors are basing their estimates and predictions on information that's coming out of China and other countries. They're using models based on some sort of simulation that we don't know anything about. What do you think the possibility is that they could be wrong? We've heard these experts make predictions about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and various other things, and they just seem to get it wrong a lot.
They certainly could get it wrong, and they got it wrong already because we're in a mess right now. And these are computer models. Try taking a computer model and see how successful that is with hurricanes and other natural disasters. They fail quite a bit. I mean, they're a good tool to use, and it's better than nothing, but they cannot predict accurately what this virus is going to do. Depend on those solely would be a huge mistake, obviously. The kind of the alarming part of this thing is its unpredictability. They think they can predict this. Hopefully, I think they would know better that that's simply not the case. These models are just tools that they use. So there's a lot of unknowns here. There's a lot of things people don't know.
Yeah. I hope I'm going the right way. This looks like a parking garage associated with the hospital, and I'm following a guy who looks like he might be going to the hospital, but I don't know.
Well, it's a good example, Jason, is if for example, when we were about to go to war in Iraq, you could tell something was about to happen by looking at the amount of traffic going in and out of the Pentagon and the increase of people showing up at the Pentagon for 24-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts. The activity in and around the Pentagon indicated that we were about to go to war. Well, the same thing would apply with coronavirus. You would think that if they think this virus is imminently going to hit New York City, you're going to see that kind of activity in and around these hospitals.
Right. So here's some guys that look like they might work here. Excuse me, do you guys work at the hospital? Do you guys work at the hospital? You guys work at the hospital? Have there been a lot of coronavirus patients coming in? You don't know? Have you seen any unusual activity that would indicate a global pandemic? Don't you think it would be like intense over here? If that was... I don't know. Where do they keep the ambulances? Are there ambulances out running around, or are they waiting? Do you guys know?
Gotta go to the front.
The front. Okay.
EMS.
Okay. Understandably, regular employees of the hospital don't really want to talk to me, Kevin, because, they don't know what the higher ups, obviously those guys aren't media spokespeople.
Yeah.
So virtually anything they say.
Well, they're all afraid of getting in trouble. If they say the wrong thing and their bosses hear about it. Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, I never dealt with a global pandemic, but I always put this in terms of things that I can relate to. And when we had a big job going at 21st Century 3D, if you came to the office in the middle of the day, you would know that something was going on. Everybody was scrambling, focused on the work, extra people there, running extra electrical circuits. I don't see anything going on anywhere around any of these hospitals that indicate this incredible urgency. And they keep telling us, just wait 4 days. I'm not trying to minimize this. I just want to make sure that we have quality information, because so much has already been sacrificed based on what seems very incomplete. So here's the entrance where people would drive up, and it doesn't seem like an unusually large number of cars here. I don't know what to say.
Well, you're right in what you're observing. We're not seeing the activity of a current emergency, of this magnitude. It's just not there. Will it be there in 4 days? Well, we'll see. But like the Pentagon example I used, we're not seeing the kind of emergency personnel coming and going and flying in, the kind of panic and ambulances coming and going. We're not seeing, based on what I'm seeing on the picture here, we're not seeing any of that at all.
No. I mean, I would have to imagine. This guy's holding a stethoscope. Are you a doctor, sir? Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? Sorry?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it looks like you're a physician. You're holding a stethoscope. Have you been dealing with a lot of coronavirus patients?
In some, yes.
You have seen.
Sorry, I have. I don't know if I can.
You're not wearing a mask, though. Aren't you worried about spreading coronavirus? You've been dealing with the patients.
There is already a break. So until unless I'm having symptoms, there is no point, because we are short of supply. So it's better to maintain social distance and wash your hands and take primary precautions. Yeah.
So, as a general question, I'm not exhibiting any symptoms. I'm not sneezing. I'm not coughing. If let's say I have the virus, but I'm not feeling sick or exhibiting symptoms, am I risking transmitting it to you by standing here talking to you?
I mean, at this distance, even if you're not coughing, before that phase start, you might. I don't know. We don't have enough studies so far. It's been in the public for 3-4 months. But as far as right now, we should stay in the home, and because as a healthcare, we have to work, and because more and more patients are going to come up, so we'll have to work in the hospital. So we have to stay safe. Yeah.
And is there any chance that these predictions are incorrect and there will not be this huge?
Sorry?
Any chance that the predictions are incorrect and maybe there won't be a huge pandemic?
Prediction, we have to see how much we are testing and how much spread is there in the community. I mean, it depends like how many more patients, like how many we are testing every day and what the number actually in the community. So as for now, for everyone's safe, we should stay at the home and just maintain the distance and spread less infection so that less number of people get infections.
Good advice for people watching. So do you think there's an increase of activity in the hospital compared?
I'm not sure, like I'm working in the clinic, but of course there's an increase in activity everywhere all over the US.
How do you know that?
I mean, there are more number of cases reported everywhere. Like in the New York, in the New York City, the cases have gone to 2,000, more than 2,000. So
How does that reporting work though? Somebody tells you, you tell somebody
no,
else?
it's online. Like the governor of New York or New York City, I don't know the mayor. He's been reporting like online, so
Right.
like 2,500 cases.
So
But
that's how you know.
Everything what I'm telling is from what I
Your
see
opinion.
internet. It's
Right.
not from the hospital, and it's like as a general human being,
Sure.
I will say, yeah.
Has the hospital given you any specific instructions as far as how to deal with the
Stay
public?
safe and stay like away like from everyone, so social distance and cope up with the infections. Yeah, that's it. Nothing. I'm just a resident doctor, so my job is to make sure that I don't spread the infection to the people and from patient to patient.
I detect an accent. Where are you from?
Sorry,
I detect an accent. Where are you from?
I'm from India, of course.
And what do you think about the spread of coronavirus in India? India seems like a
I
place
mean,
where it would spread a lot, doesn't
Yeah, I
it?
mean, I'm very cautious about that. Like my family lives in India, and 5 of my family members they are above 50 years old, so they're at high risk. And I've been watching that. I've been like keeping an eye on it, but I'm thinking it might be spreading there as well because there are people who are getting. There was one death yesterday in one of the state of Punjab, and so.
How do we know that was from COVID-19 though?
Yeah, it was.
How do we know?
It was detected, like they checked
And there's no chance that they have an inaccurate detection and inaccurate reporting.
I mean, we are not going at that phase now. For now, when we have positive COVID test, then that's likely that because that patient had recently came from Italy or somewhere. I'm not sure about that in details, but so there is a spread. I mean, there are positive cases in India, so 100% there is a spread in India. It's just when the spread is going to trigger, like go into the phase where it's going to multiply, and the patients who are people who are carrying the infection, they're going to come onto the surface, like in big number. So, but the people in India, they are also taking the precautions. They have closed down the schools, colleges, and everything. Yeah.
But isn't it true that there's a lot of poverty in India, and there's a lot of people who live in squalor? It seems like a place where a pandemic, a virus would spread quite
hit
quickly.
a lot. Like if India,
Why hasn't it happened yet?
why hasn't? Because it depends. Like what's the trajectory of the infection? Like it started in China, and from China, like most of the tourism and everything, it goes through Europe. And in my understanding, that's how it spread. Because if you see the number of flights from China to US directly, they're going to be very less as compared to the number of flights from China to Italy or Midway.
Is that true? More people flying from China to Italy than China to the US?
I mean, that's how I feel. Like it takes not one human being, but a cohort of people, like a number of people to spread the infection.
Huh.
So that's what I feel like how it got spread. How it's getting spread.
I
But
appreciate
why
it.
New York is such a big center, such a big number? Because New York is on the East Coast, and a lot of people flying to New York in and out, and West Coast also, like same thing. Yeah.
And so if someone was at the airport and became sick with coronavirus, what hospital do you expect they would be taken to?
Sorry,
If someone is sick at JFK Airport,
I'm not sure about
wouldn't
that.
they go to New York Presbyterian? It's
I'm not
downtown.
sure about that.
Or maybe they'd go to NYU Langone on the
I've
east
never
side.
been sick at the JFK, so any nearby hospital should be good. All hospitals in New York City, they are excellent, so anywhere, like, yeah.
Well, thank you, doctor. Good luck.
Thank you.
Take care of
But
yourself.
all these are my own
Opinions. Understood.
They're not from the hospital.
Understood.
What I read online, what I've been like seeing the trend and everything, they're all like personal opinion, not from the hospital.
Of course. I appreciate that. Have a nice day. So there we go, some insights from the doctor. Unfortunately, we lost Kevin. due to cellular reception, but I'm almost out of battery, or I would try to get him back. I think what we're going to do is put a pin in it here. At this point, I would expect essentially the same sort of response from this hospital that I've gotten from the others. They don't want to talk to me. The plausibly deniable response is that they're preparing for this outbreak that's going to come, and me questioning it at all is bad. I shouldn't do that. And people can watch the intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp on Thursdays on Subscribestar and Patreon. We'll be back next week with a full episode, presuming the internet in New York City remain intact. Thanks everybody for watching. Stay safe. Have a great day.